Right now, the St. Louis Cardinals are 6 games back, which looks pretty bad for a St. Louis team that usually is up in the thick of things. But don't we feel like we see this every year from St. Louis, where they come out of nowhere, they get hot down the stretch, and then all of a sudden they're in contention for the division? So I'm going to go Cardinals plus 260, or even, go with the Cubs at plus 850, because one thing we've seen from the Brewers is that they falter down the stretch. And even when they're having winning seasons, they don't make the right moves at the trade deadline. In fact, some of the years where they have been winning the division, they've traded away pieces. Like, remember when they traded away Josh Hader? That was kind of surprising to me. So, KJ, are there any teams that you think are going to be better down the stretch that were sandbagging early on, the Miami Heat of Major League Baseball?
Cardinals, I like that as a pick. Yeah, I have to go Cardinals, and here's why. Like, don't look at them as being in last place, but look at what their division is and what it looks like overall, right? So Milwaukee, with 24 wins, has the least amount of wins of all the division leaders, and it's by 3.5 games, if you will, right? So they're 3.5 games behind the leader, and then St. Louis is only 5 games behind Milwaukee. So while 6 games sound like a lot of games, it really is closer to like 3 or 4 in the bigger picture of things in terms of talent and what they have to put out on the field. So I'm with you there. That's the only team that I can see, because they're literally a last place team.
Let's go around the horn. KJ, are you willing to take a risk on somebody who's further down, not a big name? Or do you think it's one of the big names that ends up winning this?
I think it's a big name or bigger name that wins it. I think because of the way the course played on day one, it's going to be like almost 2 different courses by the time we get to Sunday. So to make those type of adjustments, you really have to have seen a lot, done a lot, been through a lot, more so than like, oh, Scooby, what's going on? Like where you suddenly get the shakes come the weekend. And you're like, yeah, it played fast because it was like aerated with ice, underneath. So yeah, I'm going to go with one of the better, more well-known names to win than for an outsider.
Right, because we haven't even talked about Eric Cole that much. And that's the reason, I think, is because we are not talking about a normal tournament. We're talking about a major, and we still have 3 days left. So, David, where do you fall on this argument?
I want to go chalky, but I want to go chalky a different way. I'm going to look at the bigger name guys that are tee to green the best in the world. Those guys that are hitting fairways on a regular basis, high percentage fairways hit and high percentage greens in regulation. Those are the guys that are going to be in contention at the end of this tournament. Those are the guys that are going to be in the title hunt. I said yesterday, I wish this was 1995, early 2000s. All my money probably would have been on Jim Furyk.
Well, it's not, David. It is the year 2023. And if we're talking about guys who are good off the tee, you know who's number 1 on tour off the tee? It's Scotty Scheffler. So I'm going to ride with my dude. I'm already on him to finish in the top 10, which I know you don't get to brag about winning a bet when you take the favorite, but still, Scotty Scheffler, it's hard to go against one of the most consistent golfers in all of golf. KJ, we know that you have roots in Boston. You've done a lot of stuff for WEEI. So what is the thermometer on what Boston fans are feeling right now going into game 2?
Not as intense as obviously the game 7 situation that they had with Philadelphia, because if you remember last year, this is what happened in the Eastern Conference Finals, where Jimmy Butler went off for 50 points or something like that, 52 points maybe, and they won. Now, I think the only difference is last year is that Eastern Conference Finals game was in Miami to start. The series started in Miami because Miami was the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference last year. I don't think there's as much panic unless there is a loss tonight. Then you would have to say, okay, this team, while being down 2 coming back at the end of a series, can it do the same at the start of a series with Jimmy Butler and with Eric Spoelstra? That's really the key. Do you believe that the Celtics could win 4 out of 5 games potentially if they lose tonight? against Eric Spoelstra. And that would be a harder sell to me than what happened with Doc Rivers and the misfits of the 76ers. So there's a little bit of concern because obviously it's a home game and you want to be able to win, especially the horrible 45-46 third quarter that the Celtics gave up to the Heat. So that can't happen again. 8.5 is such a big number to me in terms of what Miami can do, how they tend to scrap back. This you almost have to throw out what you saw from the regular season Heat and say that this is a totally differently constructed team, even though they're not. They actually are missing pieces. They're missing Tyler Hero, and yet seem to be a more conducive, grinded out team that is not going to lose by 9 points. So I'm not buying the 8.5, but I am buying a Celtics victory. So yeah, I think the Celtics win, and I think the fan base feels that way, that they'll even it up 1-1 and will have the ability to win one on the road. But if they lose again tonight, it's going to be very loud and ugly. What must it be like for a lot of these major league catchers who suddenly have to have the ability to throw out runners stealing bases?
I could never appreciate more not playing anymore. I'm sitting here going, oh man, my arm is killing me. Like these guys, they're running on them. And ultimately, this isn't like an industry secret. Base stealers are stealing off the pitchers. And the new rules with the disengagements have really made the pitchers look at it and say, all right, I got to take a little more ownership, because before it was just snot rockets and smelling salts and see how hard I can throw the ball as a pitcher. Now it's like, oh, wait a minute. If I let him get to second base, that's like giving up a hit, and I can actually do something about it. So to me, it's been really cool because I like seeing the little stuff in the games. It's not just the stolen bases. It's pitchers needing to use the clock, kind of like a quarterback running the play clock down to 3 seconds and snapping. Then they run it down to 1 second and snap, just so that those guys don't come in and crush them. It's the same thing with baseball now. So I really like it for my catching cohorts, the other guys that are still in the game. Keep on throwing, boys. Like it's tough for them, but it does. You're exactly right. When you talked about how the game, the split screen, I wish they would go back to the same split screen again. I think that was exciting to watch, and they couldn't figure out how, because the most exciting play in baseball is the triple, but stolen base is a close second because there's just so much anticipation. Is he going to go? Is he not going to go? And it's really shown some athletic sides of some of the catchers in the game, like Sean Murphy, JT Realmuto, Will Smith, guys that can really throw.